Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Triple N Media. I am Nik Nikam from Houston, Texas. Today, the topic this is Bidenomics or Badenomics. You decide the title Triple N State of the Union Report. 4 months now, and let us see how far this country has come. We're going to be looking at the CPI, the Producer Price Index, interest rates, economics, inflation, gas prices, border crisis, steel prices, chip shortages, cyber attack, national security, border crisis, and much more. Grab a cup of coffee and let's proceed. Just yesterday, they announced the Consumer Price Index, which came in at 4.2% compared to a year ago. The Consumer Price Index went up by 0.9% in just 1 month. You may be wondering, what is Consumer Price Index and what does it include? Here you can see it includes the housing, the apparel, transportation, education, goods, recreation, medical care, and obviously all of these are just going up. And here is a breakdown. More than 42% is related to the housing. And of course, if you ever been to a restaurant and you can see how the prices have skyrocketed in the last several months. The same thing with the housing. The housing prices are out of sight at this present time, and we may be in a housing bubble at this current conditions. Of course, the medical costs keep going up, and nobody can really check those. As far as transportation, you know what's happening at the gas pumps. So it's no surprise the Consumer Price Index is just getting out of the gate like a race. Let's look at the next one, the Producer Price Index. It is the cost of producing products by buying the raw materials, transporting them, and manufacturing a car, an iPhone, or a medical equipment, or a furniture. That is the Producer Price Index. It went up by 0.6% according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. The April spike of 6.2% for the last 12 months marks the largest increase in Producer Price Index since 2010. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about Bidenomics, State of the Union Report, May 2021. The economists were predicting a Producer Price Index to increase by 0.3%, but it has increased by almost double that number. Year over year, the index price forecasts to rise by 3.8% according to the fact. Consumer Price Index is going up, the Producer Price Index is going up, the interest rates are going up, and you know what the ultimate result is going to be. Talking about Consumer Price Index, there are a lot of raw materials, the prices of which have skyrocketed. Chlorine has gone up by 180%. And look at this, packing materials is up by 155%. And lumber prices. Have you ever tried to go to a department store like Home Depot or Lowe's and check for the lumber? I don't know. I don't know how many new houses they are building. There hasn't been a 200% increase in the construction, but the lumber prices have gone up from 800 to 1600. That is a 100% increase in lumber prices. This is absurd. There is absolutely no reason as to why the lumber prices are going up. It is not like that we are running out of cedar forest. Are we? This is Bidenomics, ladies and gentlemen. Lumber prices, as I showed you again, it is just skyrocketing in the last month. Job growth. Let's talk about employment. There was great hope that the unemployment numbers are going to just blow off the chart. Maybe not so. In April, they added 266,000 jobs when more than 1 million jobs were predicted by the economists. In fact, the number of jobs added in April were less than the number of jobs added in March and in February. What is going on? You know what's going on. There are a lot of people looking for a job, and there are a lot of people they can't find a job. And there are a lot of people who don't want to work because they are getting more money through these COVID-19 paychecks, and there's no incentive for them to go back to work. And we're going to be talking about that free paper money too. Labor force. Just before the corona crash, 63% of the Americans were employed, and it dropped to like 60%. Now the number is hovering around like 61.5. But as I said, there are more jobs available. However, people are not willing to return to work for a number of reasons. One of which, as I told you, is they are getting a free check, which is a lot more than their paycheck. How would you like to get a free check like that? That is Bidenomics, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I talked about this job. March, there were 770,000 jobs added compared to 266,000 jobs added in April. And the April unemployment rate, which was supposed to be dropping, it remained unchanged at 6.1%. People are standing in line to find a job. They can't find a job. There are a lot of people who don't even want to leave their house. You get the message. Now let's talk about gasoline prices. Everywhere you look around, you go to the grocery store, you're paying more money. You go to the gas station, you're paying more money. Look at here, the gas prices were $1.69 in 2020. Now the gas prices are close to $3. And the diesel is over $4 if you go to California. Do we have a real gas crisis? Well, in fact, we're going to talk about that one too. So what's causing all these prices to go up? Is this Bidenomics? Let's talk about the interest rate. You know, our interest rate right after the corona crash had dropped to 0.5%. And look at this interest rate spiked as high. This is a 10-year treasury. Interest rate went up to 1.74, and it has been kind of zigzagging here. It's up to like 1.685. And the economists predict the interest rate could be up to 2.4%, and then it will cool off. And what does the increased interest rate mean? More mortgage cost, more cost of doing business, less corporate profits, less earnings, and that's going to affect the stock market and the stock indices. Now that brings us to the topic of inflation. We talked about the CPI, we talked about the PPI, we talked about the cost of goods all across the spectrum of the United States. Now let's talk about inflation. When you add all those things I talked about, it's no surprise we are seeing steep increase in inflation. Inflation is a part of a growing economy. That's why Fed is trying to play cool, saying that they can accept up to 2.4% inflation in year 2021, and they have revised their numbers for 2022 and 2023. How are we getting inflation here? Expansion of money. This is what the Fed does during periods of crisis. Just print money, give away free money, and that leads to excess spending, which leads to inflation. Talking about paper money, maybe that's another reason why the stock market is at all-time high, because the paper money is driving up these prices. What do you think? And of course, the government regulations, canceling key pipeline, canceling multiple oil businesses, and bringing more and more regulations means more and more cost of doing business, which means less bottom line for the corporations and less earnings. Managing national debt. We just approved $2 trillion for the COVID paychecks, Now we're going to be spending another $1 to $2 trillion for infrastructure upgrade. And guess who is paying for all those things? You, your children, your grandchildren, me, my children, my grandchildren are all going to be paying. Someone has taken the free authority to chop the money so that you and your grandchildren will be paying for that. Of course, when the dollar is strong, it's going to have an effect on inflation. Inflation, what about it? It's just an integral part of a growing society. Why are you complaining about? We have seen inflation as high as 18 to 20% during Jimmy Carter days. We survived. So what's the problem? Aha, that's the problem, you see. The central bank is projecting an inflation rate of 2.4% for this year, revising the previous estimate of 1.8%. But if you talk to the private economists, you get a totally different picture, because the Fed is sugarcoating the information, and the private economists predict the inflation could be as high as 4.2%. What do you think? Have you seen inflation around yourself as you walk out of the house and try to buy anything on the street, in the market, at the gas station? National security of importance in one, protecting our borders, and number two, protecting national interest. That brings us to the topic of a colonial pipeline. A colonial pipeline that extends all the way from New Jersey to Houston, Texas, that covers the entire eastern part of the United States. When the colonial pipeline has this fence and all these warnings, that did not deter dark side from hacking their computers and bringing a crippling halt to the colonial pipeline. What did the White House say? Oh, this is not our problem. It's a private company. They need to take care of their security. Come on! Is this Bidenomics? Are you kidding me? When the whole national pipeline has been compromised and the entire gasoline supply has been interrupted with long lines in the northern states, the administration says it is not a national security issue. No, we are not concerned. This is a private company. Colonial company pipeline can do whatever they want to get their computers restored. Can you imagine a government saying that? On the other hand, the national security should have been right on top of this, trying to find out, who are the culprits so that we can prevent another attack like that on a major infrastructure like airline reservations, satellites, or electric grid all across the country. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Bidenomics. This is what you wanted, and this is what you're seeing. And of course, you all have seen long lines, and the gasoline price is just skyrocketing. And did you know that Colonial Pipeline had to pay millions of dollars of ransom? I know this raises a whole different topic, as should any private company or a nation pay ransom through these hackers who hijack our digital world. Because the digital world is much larger than Colonial Pipeline. It is much larger than any single state or entity in the United States. Remember 10-hour blackout in New York City, power line grid completely off? Did we find out what caused it? And can you imagine somebody attacking a major digital infrastructure like airline reservations or satellites that control the plane movements? On any given day, there are 8,000 planes flying all across the United States skies. And you don't think this is the Homeland Security's job to protect the integrity of the digital network in this country? Come on, give me a break. Well, of course, this is Bidenomics. Semiconductor shortage. Or maybe Biden didn't create semiconductor shortage, but semiconductor shortage is crippling many industries in various sectors in this country and also all across the globe. It is involved in automobiles, it is involved in computers, it is involved in cell phones, healthcare, even your grocery store checkout. They all use semiconductors. And here is the semiconductor price just going from 1500 to 3000, the index, 100% increase. And what do you think is going to happen to the price of your phone, your equipment, your car, or anything that has a little chip, your hearing aid for that matter? How are we going to address all these issues? Now, let's talk about raw material steel. We were talking about producer price index. Producer doesn't mean just manual labor. You're talking about getting the material dug up from the ground, like steel or copper, and transporting that. That's going to be more costly too. And then look at the steel prices. The steel prices have gone up from $450 to $1,200. That's a 300% increase in steel price. Who's going to check all these things? Who is responsible for? How come in 4 months, all of a sudden, the country is turning upside down? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I see. This is Bidenomics. Okay, let's turn our attention to the border crisis. I live in Texas. I live in Houston, Texas, and I have visited the southern border of Texas and the northern border of Mexico. Did you know during Biden administration, close to 180,000 people have been detained across the US-Mexico border? The largest number in 20 years. And the number of people coming across is just astounding, because no country, I'll tell you, can absorb this amount of immigrants or illegal immigrants, because no country can divert all its resources from a pandemic crisis to deal with these illegal immigrants. We are not even taking care of the homeless veterans in the streets of San Francisco, where they are sleeping under the freeway. And these illegal immigrants are getting a VIP treatment. Did you know it costs $750 per taking care of one child or an adult per day at these borders? We had the lowest number of immigrants during the Trump administration. Why are we seeing this astronomical increase in these numbers, which is putting an undue stress on the border patrol, all the security, and also the health services? And look at the living conditions of these people. President Biden talks about scientific approach to COVID-19 pandemic. Come on, man, give me a break. When President Biden folds that mask and he's touching with his fingers, I'm telling you, touching with his fingers and putting them in his pocket, and then later on while he's talking or giving a presentation, he will rub his nose. Where do you think the virus is going to go? That is not a scientific way of handling a mask. So don't tell the public how to use a mask. And forget about the mask. What about the CDC guidelines for distance, mask, and what happened to those? How come they don't apply to illegal immigrants? It applies only to school children. It applies only to employees at work. It applies to only when you fly on an airplane or book a cruise ship, but it doesn't apply to illegal immigrants. How can you have a double standard? Well, that is Bidenomics. In fact, the first thing that Biden did was to cancel Trump wall. Well, I tell you what, according to the latest report from Fox, in fact, Biden has been forced by the people in the southern border to build that 13 miles of wall which had kept all these illegal immigrants from crossing, putting an undue stress, undue risk on the border security patrol. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a synopsis of Bidenomics or Badenomics. You decide. This has been a Triple N State of the Union report. May 2021. I am Nik Nikam from Triple N Media, Houston, Texas. Have a wonderful day, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel.